Welcome to the Historical Romance Sampler Podcast. I'm your host, Katherine Grant, and each week I introduce you to another amazing historical romance author. My guest reads a little sample of their work, and then we move into a free-ranging interview. If you like these episodes, don't forget to subscribe to the Historical Romance Sampler wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Now, let's get into this week's episode.
I'm super excited to welcome to the podcast today, Charis Michaels. Charis is the USA Today best-selling author of 12 historical Regency romances for HarperCollins Avon. Her books answer the question, so how did you two meet? In an era with no DMs or swiping left and right. She loves smart humor, fairy tale whimsy, and wild plots that force proximity. She studied journalism at Texas A&M and lives in the DC metro area with her family. Charis, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, it is my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I am really excited. I'm a big fan of your writing. I'm excited to talk to you about your books, this book, and also your career. But to get started, you're reading for us today from You May Kiss the Duke. Is there anything about this book or the scene that you want to clue us into before you start the reading?
Sure. I'm holding up the book. This is my sixth book. It came out about 2017 or 18, I believe. It's sort of smack dab in the middle of my career. And I like to read it when I am asked to read aloud because it just has scenes in it that really lend itself to dialogue, which I think is really fun. This book is part of a series where three friends that are women marry three friends that are men, which is something I will never do again. But it sounded like a good idea at the time. And the three women are best friends. They live in the countryside and they want to move to London, but they can't because they're single women. So they think if we marry, we'll have the freedom to be in London, but they don't want husbands. So they trade their dowries for men that are not going to be around. So they're looking for like gentlemen sailors, sea captains, that sort of thing. And they advertise for these guys. And then ultimately they fall in love with these sort of conveniently arranged, advertised mail order husbands. And this is the third book. And the reason this woman wanted to move to London is she's being beaten by an uncle who inherits the house that she lives in with her family after her father dies. And so the third friend who wanted to do this sort of dowry trade, sea captain, gone all the time arrangement, agreed to marry her because he never planned to get married. He needed the money, and it sounded like a good way to help this woman out because when he first meets her, she was being beaten by her uncle. And he's this like avenging vigilante spirit. And so he agrees to marry her and then sail away. And they really only see each other a couple of times a year to trade mail. However, she writes books, and as part of her research writing books, she discovers him in a hospital morgue, his body. He has a very distinctive tattoo on his arm that she saw the day they got married, just peeking out of the sleeve. And she was walking past this hospital morgue on other work 4 years after they had been married, but really estranged. And she thinks that looks like my estranged husband's tattoo. And she investigates further, and it's him. And she investigates further, and he's actually not dead, and he's piled in this morgue. So she hauls him home and she starts nursing him back to health and consciousness. And ultimately, he had a stab wound that was infected, and some really slipshod care put him in the morgue because he was presumed dead when really he was really almost dead. So the tropes here are what I call Florence Nightingale. She's nursing him back to health, and she's a terrible nurse and actually not really that either very nurturing or caring and little grossed out by blood. And then also convenient marriage. And then there's a class difference because even though he's become very rich as a sea captain, he started out, his mother was a prostitute, which is alluded to in this scene, and he really rose up through society. Anyway, so that is the setup. In this scene, which originally I thought I was going to read an earlier bedroom scene where he first awakens and he realizes he's in her care. But when I was preparing, I decided to read a scene where she's in his room, he's in the bed, he's bedridden, he's much better, but still bedridden, and she's asking him about his tattoo. And that's where the scene picks up. And so that is where I will start reading. Women had been asked to touch Stoker's tattoo for as long as he could remember. It elicited a thrilled sort of reverence from every female, from rescued prostitutes to old grandmothers to little girls. He'd gotten the damn thing because it alarmed him to be mistaken for a gentleman. Imagine his surprise when so many females were invigorated by the notion of what a gentleman was not. Now he was given no choice but to offer his arm to Sabine. He'd watched her reach out, watched her trace his first one finger, then 5 fingers. When she'd slid her hand around his bicep, he'd stopped watching and closed his eyes. For the first time since he'd regained consciousness, the burning pain in his side left him. The earth shrank to her cool caress. Am I hurting you? She asked softly. No, he thought, but he said yes. How? She demanded. How is this hurting you? He thought, by killing me, by teasing me, by offering me something that will not happen. And he said, this cannot happen. What cannot happen? She asked. Her hand was gentle on his bicep. Slowly, she began to fan her fingers out, a feather-like touch of unfolding sensation. Stoker cleared his throat. You were curious about the tattoo, and now you've seen it. She looked up, trying to read his eyes. He leveled her with what he hoped was his most intimidating scowl. Stoker, she asked, do you feel like I'm taking advantage by touching your arm when you've asked me not to? I should never want to take advantage. Sabine, he began, struggling to find the correct words. You cannot take advantage because the benefit of you touching my tattoo or my arm or any part of me would be entirely mine. So you needn't worry about taking anything from me or a misbegotten balance of power. Really? She looked confused. The only gain? Because I quite liked it too. You're very strong, but you're also very controlled. It's intriguing. I can't say why I want to touch you so much, but I do. She stroked him again with her fingers. What are you doing? He rasped. I don't know, she said honestly, swiping higher, nearly to his shoulder. May I speak freely? He asked. It was a reasonable question that came out in broken, cracked terms. Can you? He narrowed his eyes, and now she would be coy. Without thinking, he reached up and snatched her hand, trapping her fingers against him. Madam, he spoke quickly, lowly, a confession. Forgive me if I'm making assumptions or misread your intent, but the touch of your hand and the look on your face do not feel curious or clinical or friendly. Do you know how it feels? It feels sexual. There, he'd said it. He'd meant to shock her with bold, coarse talk. He doubled down. Do you know what that means? The cream of her skin turned pink and her beautiful lips opened in a pouty O. Slowly, she shook her head. Tell me what it means, she asked. Then boldly, confidently, she moved her hand beneath his, wrapping it around his forearm. Stoker's vision shrank to her fingers. Sensation frothed beneath the skin. Of course she would make him bloody say it. Are you a virgin, Sabine? He heard himself asked. It didn't matter, it wouldn't matter, but it would inform what he would say next. His mouth went dry. He wondered if he would manage to hear her answer over the pounding of his heart. Of course, she said. Stoker was pulled under with a wave of relief. Of course, he repeated. He paused, picking around the chaos in his brain for words that might safely end the journey on which they'd somehow found themselves. At the risk of explaining something you already know, he began, sex, when you have it, is transactional. Is like a transaction. A transaction? She repeated, this as if he'd said, sex is like a garden rake. Yes, he said, sex is something to which women consent in exchange for something they require, such as money or protection or respectability or even a child. Sabine scrunched up her face in distaste. Is that what you believe? Sabine, he sighed, I, perhaps more than any man alive, have seen the beginning, middle, and end of every facet of human desire. This isn't an opinion. It is what I have known since I could hear my mother at work across the room while I was meant to be asleep on the floor. Sex was a transaction into which she entered again and again until it killed her. I have rescued countless girls from the similar fate. I have seen it dressed up in luxury and diversion and flower-trimmed romantic trappings. I have also seen it reduced to minutes, nay seconds, against alley walls. But every time I have seen the same basic trade, a man's pleasure for some payment to a woman. It troubles me to assume so much and offend you with my bluntness, but it cannot go unsaid. I hold you in too high esteem to enter into any such transaction with you. He looked away, unable to hold her gaze. It was too much to hope that she would flee from the room. It was too much to hope that she would slap him. Was it too much to hope that she would say, "Very well, I'm grateful to finally know the truth of it"? He glanced back to her. Yes, it was too much. She was staring at him as if he had just explained that Sunday would not follow Saturday. "But are you certain that everyone views relations in this manner?" she asked. He ran a hand through his hair and scratched the back of his neck. And now she would have forced him to elaborate. And now they must debate the topic. "Sex," he lectured patiently, "is viewed in every possible light, I'm sure, but few people have seen what I have seen. As much as I am loath to admit it, I really am somewhat of an expert. An expert on sex, an expert on the motivations and ramifications of sex." She nodded and looked at the ceiling, thinking this over. Stoker tried to watch her, but her pensive expression, so stark in profile, was too beautiful, and he looked away. After a moment, she said, "And what of your business partners, Casson and Joseph Chance?" "I beg your pardon?" "One cannot help wonder about the Earl of Casson and his Countess, my friend Willow, or what of Joseph and my friend Tessa? Willow and Tessa have been quite open with me, and they reported nothing transactional about sex with their husbands." Stoker sighed. "I have not discussed it with Casson or Joseph, but I have no doubt they have managed it with decorum and respect and made the effort very worth it for their wives." Now her expression was even more confused. "This is nothing like they described it to me." "I don't like to speculate on the relations of others," he said. She stared at him. He could see the wheels turning in her head, but she did not seem embarrassed, and she did not seem chastened or threatened. Now she said, "And so you never engage in the transaction of sex? I mean, you yourself?" "And now I will expire," he thought. "Sabine," he pleaded. "What? Surely you cannot mean to demand that I reveal my virginal state, but refuse to discuss yours." "I am not a virgin," he said quickly, praying this was enough. "And you are racked with guilt because of the advantage you've taken of the women in your past? Is that it? It all began so innocently. She wished to touch your tattoo, and then it spiraled into fantastical sex for you, not for her, because she only wanted to touch your tattoo and then earn some reward." "Sabine," he groaned, "I want to know. You've been so gracious to educate me, and now I'm captivated, and I want to hear all of it." "Sex with me never begins innocently," he said. He couldn't look at her. He stared at the paper in his lap. From the corner of his eye, he saw her agitated posture perk up. Her full attention, of course. "So you pay for this non-innocent sex," she theorized. "No, never. Not in as many words. If you must know." "Oh, I must know." Stoker squinted at her, working to string words together that would end this. He sighed heavily and said, "The women I have taken to bed have all been carefully selected to require nothing, expect nothing, and want no part of me after I've gone. They are generally widowed or older or both. They are independent beyond traditional standards for most women. That is, they are so privileged in rank or wealth, they do as they please." "And so the transaction is—" "I cannot say exactly. It's never been an ideal arrangement. These interludes haunt me, actually, and the reason for this entire excruciating conversation is to avoid anything of the sort for you. You will not be haunted, and I will not have the sin of defiling you on my conscience. We made this deal from the beginning." He glared at her. She looked back with a pensive expression. "So you really do find this conversation excruciating?" "Yes." "Well, I quite like it," she said. "Although one thing is unclear. How does my touching your arm have anything to do with sex?" She accompanied this question with a flutter of her cool fingers on his skin. Stoker's body surged in response, and he made a pained, growling noise. "This is what I said from the first, Sabine. You cannot run your hands up and down my arm. You cannot caress and lean in and look at me with wide-eyed, bloody wonder. You are too innocent to know it, and I cannot fathom what has come over you, but this is how sex begins. No man could withstand it, least of all me. I'm sorry." Sabine crinkled up her nose and fluttered her fingertips again. "And what if I wish to challenge your theory that sex is always a transaction or an exchange? What if I'm to say, this is not what I've been told at all?" "Then I would be forced to say that you know virtually nothing about it. And I know quite a lot, actually. And I'm sorry." Sabine sucked in a breath, a flash of anger deepening her fingers. I detest being told that I don't know something, even if I don't. Well, you don't, and it's a gift. Be glad you don't know. She was shaking her head. Tell me I have something to learn. Tell me I'm wrong, but please never say, I don't know anything about it. It's infuriating. It goads me on, actually. She closed her fingers around Stoker's arm and he ground his teeth. Do you know what infuriates me? He gritted out. Being bloody taken by surprise, being unprepared, casting around for a solution to a problem that I could not have anticipated. And your sudden interest in my bloody tattoo and your hands on my skin and asking provocative questions about sex has taken me wholly off guard. So forgive me if I've not been gracious or articulate or clear. You've consistently claimed to want no part of any man, myself in particular, and yet your hands are everywhere. Come now, said Sabine. Everywhere? Was she teasing him? Could she not see the loosening grip on his self-control? Look, she said, I'm sorry if you're surprised, but maybe I'm surprised too. I've not given your tattoo a second thought until now. I've never thought of touching you, and certainly I had no intention of discussing sex. You were the one who, her voice had risen. She was sucking in air to speak, but now she stopped. She blinked. She let out a breath and leaned in. Actually, she told him, that last bit was a lie. What? Thought Stoker. This sounded like a trap. What if, she went on, I tell you I am interested in touching your arm and your shoulder and leaning in and giving you. And here she paused and Stoker's heart stopped. A kiss. What if I tell you that? Stoker's brain went completely blank. He saw only white. His last useful thought was of whipping off the covers and staggering from the room, down the hall, and into the street. Sabine, no, he managed. I hate being told no, she said defiantly.
What a fun scene. Oh my gosh, this put the song People Will Say We're in Love from Oklahoma in my head, where they're like, don't send me roses. Don't look at me that way. Don't do this. Ah, that was fun. We're going to take a quick break for our sponsors, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. Hey, audiobook listeners. Have you checked out the official Historical Romance Sampler Season 1 playlist on Libro.fm? On the playlist, you'll find historical romances you heard here first that are available to listen to on Libro.fm. Plus, if you're not yet a Libro.fm subscriber, use code HISTORICAL to get extra credits in your first month. Head on over to the Historical Romance Sampler Linktree to learn more. I'm back with Charis Michaels, who just read from You May Kiss the Duke. This was, as I said, a very fun, combative scene in there's so much denying that they're feeling any attraction towards each other while they're both obviously feeling attraction towards each other. And I found that really fun. And I think it's a really interesting look at, I'm not sure if we want to call it purity culture, but the sexual environment of Regency where, the woman must remain a virgin until she's married, and yet the man is exposed to all these different types of sex, and Stoker, growing up with a prostitute as a mother, has this very kind of negative view. He only sees it as a transaction. He has no recognition of the emotional side of it that can make it, positive. At what point did you decide to explore this dynamic, and was it something that you kind of consciously brought to the page, or do you think it came out as you were writing?
Well, when you're going to write a book that has explicit sex, or at least sex described on the page for a chapter or two chapters, I think the way sex is viewed in a larger context is needs to be a really important part of the plot. And so somebody always has a hang up with sex in my books so that we can explore that in addition to just describing the sex that they have, as well as work through it during those love scenes. So Sabine in this book is actually, she's a virgin because she's sheltered, but she's rather adventurous as the book goes along, and he is the one who's stunted and warped. He grew up in a brothel. He then got into the work of rescuing prostitutes with a charity that was explored several books ago in his teen years. So he had a mother who sort of took care of him across the room while she was quote unquote working. And then he busted into all these brothels and rescued prostitutes. So he doesn't come to sex in a way that feels like it can be mutually beneficial. And that's why he's talking about it being transactional. And just from a technical standpoint of writing in any love story, you need really deep conflict. And having a guy with a big hang up on sex is a lot for my characters to chew on and work through. And and Sabine was beaten before, not in a sexual way, but just by an uncle who liked to backhand her. So she has a distrust of men that's not tied to sex. And she's only able to actually become emotionally, intimately involved with him when he's almost too sick to lift his head. So he's a patient in bed and she's feeding him soup, which he hates. And she's got a footman to come in and sort of take care of his personal needs. But other than that, he's like a invalid and she's having to take care of him. And it's the only way she can get close to a man and not feel like she might be in physical danger. And then when she gets over that, she's ready for more because, of course, even though they were married in one afternoon after hardly knowing each other, there was that instant attraction. And she sort of kept that hidden away. And he loved her from the beginning because it's a Charis Michaels book. And so they both were harboring this incredible attraction, but the plot had to get them to a place where they could start feeling safe enough to explore it. A lot of times in my books, the man has the hang up with the sex, and the purity culture has really affected him more than her. And I'm not really sure what inside me puts it down like that, but I love a buttoned up, uptight guy for whatever reason being unraveled by a bold woman, I guess. And that's what happens in this book.
Yeah, well, I think it's really refreshing to see it be the man who is working through issues in relation to sex because part of purity culture is heaping all of that responsibility onto the woman's shoulders. We must protect our own virtue. And so for it to be the man's problem is kind of shifting that dynamic in a way that's also real. I mean, you know, men do have sexual hangups in
Yeah,
real life.
and I think he was viewing it as chivalry and his version of honor, even though he didn't see himself as a gentleman. He thought this is the way that I need to be honorable. And it takes a while and it's sort of a fun discovery to figure out, actually, if I'm going to do right by her, I'm going to be a stand-up guy, but I'm also going to make sure that she feels pleasure. So I don't, it, it doesn't have to be, there are just so many different, it's a spectrum. And he
Yes.
had to learn that. And that's what we did over the course of the book.
Yeah, that's lovely. You clearly have such a grasp on the romance genre, and as I was researching you ahead of time, I know why. So you worked for Romance Writers of America as an editor of the trade journal, among other things, back in the 90s, if I'm right. What was it like to work there, and do you think it prepared you at all for your career as a romance author, or did you end up discovering that, life as an author is different than you expected?
It was the absolute dream job. I went to college in Texas, and the national office of RWA was just up the road, 2 hours away in Houston. And I had a senior PR class where we had to work, like get ourselves some sort of internship. And this is before the internet. And I was like literally in my college library looking at all trade associations in America that might have to do with publishing because I wanted to eventually either work in publishing or be a writer as a journalism major. And then I found the National Trade Association for Romance Novelists like just up the road. And so I wrote to the woman who would become my boss and asked if I could come for a summer or 2 weeks. And as a lifelong romance reader, of course, I was only 20. So how long had my life been? In the 4 years since I had been reading romances, I was just a super fan. So the very first national convention that summer was the keynote speaker was Judith McNaught. And if you know anything about old school romance, like back in the day, 89, 90, 91, she was just she was the Taylor Swift of romance writing. And she was my absolute favorite. And I got to meet her, and I got to meet so many authors as part of working the national convention, which was just 1 week. But when I was back in the office, I was on the phone to all the various authors all the time. And it was an absolute dream job. It was a wonderful community of authors, published, unpublished, aspiring, And it gave me a look at the backside of how you approach an agent, approach an editor, what they were looking for, why it's so important that books be defined as romance or women's fiction or thriller or that's not really important to the reader, but it's super important in publishing and to a writer to know what lane you're in. And I learned it's incalculable, all I learned. I loved it.
Aw. And my last question for you is, how does your creativity work? Do you get pulled into thinking about the dialogue in a scene? Do you get pulled into, oh, I want to write this trope? Do you get pulled into specific characters? How do stories begin for you?
Well, I try to be very commercial about it, and that sounds mercenary, but like I'm not doing this so that my mother can read it. I would like to, if I'm going to make the effort, I want to sell it and I want to see my book in the stores and I want to make money. So I always look at how am I going to market it? How am I going to describe it in one sentence in a way that beguiles people and pulls them in? And how am I going to keep it current and relevant? So I'm never going to write about anything that is indulgent just to me. I'm looking at the zeitgeist and I'm looking at what's something known and fun that I can put my own twist on that people will hear about in a very fast little Instagram post or snippet and think, oh, wait, what was that? I need to hear more about that. So I've really made a study because I have so many ideas. People are always like, oh, where do you get your ideas? Ideas are not the problem. I have journals and journals and journals of ideas of how two people that hate each other can meet and fall in love. So it's just a matter of framing them in a way that is commercial. So Claiming the Princess is my book that's coming out in 3 weeks, and it follows the trope of surprise, you're a princess, because it's book 3 in a series about exiled royal people. And in this book, the exiled royal baby was exiled when she was so young. No one had told her that she was a princess, and she was raised by a kindly old couple in the woods. And when the hero comes, he has to tell her, we're engaged and also you're a princess. And so the story goes on from there. So the marketability and the commercial pinpoint there is like, that's a fun trope. When you're dealing with historicals, you don't have to have something that's quite so current, recognizable, but you do have something that you need something that's universally appealing to people who like to read love stories. And I think the trope of surprise, you're a princess is something that is intriguing to those types of readers. One of my
Hmm.
favorite examples of this is like Tessa Dare's Castles Ever After series idea. It was about people who randomly inherited a castle, which you love. But just even the poetry of Castles Ever After. We love castles. We love happily ever after. We love the idea of inheriting property that we didn't know we were going to get. We love the idea of moving into that property and then someone coming along and saying, wait, this is mine, and having him be a hot guy. I mean, it's just genius. And so what I start with is how can I make it sound so fun in a little bitty 5-second snippet so that you're intrigued? Because all I have in terms of everyone's attention is 5 seconds until they sit down with a book. So that's how I start. And then I can slide in any number of, I like to do enemies to lovers. I like to do class differences. I love bodyguards.
Mhm.
Slide it into that. I hate the term cutesy, but that really commercial, marketable flashpoint framework.
Yeah. Wow, that's a really good way to approach it. And I think now is a good time to move to our game, Love It or Leave It. All
Okay.
right. Do you love it or leave it? The protagonists meet in the first 10% of the story.
Love it. It's absolutely essential. I like them to meet within 3 pages.
Ooh. Do you love it or leave it? Dual point of view narration.
I love it in historical romance. I am currently pivoting and trying to write a modern day set rom-com, and it is only in the female point of view. And it was hard at first, but I'm finding my feet with it, I guess.
All right. Do you love it or leave it? Third person past tense narration.
I love it for historical regency. This other book I'm writing is first person present, and it was a challenge, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. I hope.
All right. Do you love it or leave it? The third act, dark moment.
I love it just because it extends the book a little bit longer when you don't want it to end.
Do you love it or leave it? Always end with an epilogue.
I love an epilogue, but frequently when I finally get to the end, I'm like, enough. Can't write anymore. There's nothing left to say. I write so long. These books are meant to be 75 to 80,000 words, and I'm always pushing 120,
Oh,
120.
wow.
Yeah. So, like it as a reader, don't like it as a writer.
All right. Love it or leave it. Always include your research in the author's note.
I love an author's note, and I tear it up with the author's note. So, yes, I love it.
And are there any other rules I didn't ask about that you like to break?
I guess all of those rules are not broken for me. I this is unpopular, but I don't like an unlikable heroine. I will never pick that book to read. I enjoy likable people in my life. I don't love to hang out with unpleasant women that are always in a bad mood or bratty. And I don't like my heroines to be like that. So, and it's not that they're not, don't have bad days or don't have challenges, but they're usually pretty adorable, for lack of a better word. That's just a Charis Michaels book for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for playing Love It or Leave It, and thank you for coming on. Where can readers find you and your books?
My books are in stores or on at any online retailer like barnesandnoble.com or Amazon.com. My local independent bookstore here in Alexandria, Virginia is called Old Town Books, and the website is oldtownbooks.com. And you can order from their website, and I will run over to the bookshop and sign it and put some swag in the package. So that's oldtownbooks.com. And you can read excerpts of my books and more about me on my website, charismichaels.com. And then I hardly ever go on Facebook anymore unless I have a book out, but more often I am on Instagram at Charis Michaels.
All right. And this episode's coming out at the end of October, and you have a book coming out then too, which you mentioned it's Claiming the Princess.
Yes, Claiming the Princess.
All right. So everyone go read Claiming the Princess, and don't forget to pick up the book that we heard today, You May Kiss the Duke.
Yes.
Thank you again, Cheris. This has been awesome.
Oh, it's been so much fun for me. Thank you so much for all your research and wonderful questions and your interest.
That's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe to the Historical Romance Sampler wherever you listen, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Until next week, happy reading!